Welcome to this edition of SAU Magazine, a weekly program featuring news, profiles, sports, commentary, interviews, and special events, all coming to you from the campus of Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia.
Good morning and welcome to KSAU's interview program. I'm Mitzi Bagwell, and along with my co-host Jennifer Salley, we would like to welcome our guest for today, Dr. Jerry Cortez. Dr. Cortez is the department head for the Theater and Communications Department here at Southern Arkansas University. Good morning, Dr. Cortez.
Good morning.
I would like to begin with a few personal questions so we can let our listeners know a little bit about you and your life here in Magnolia. First, how did you get interested in theater?
Well, it's a long story that I can make very short. I got hooked into my first play in a speech class, like so many kids do. The teacher asked, for volunteers, and I opened my big mouth, and she said, "I'll see you tonight at auditions." I said, "Okay," and I shook all the way to auditions. After, my first speech lasting 20 seconds, I thought it's the last place I belong on a stage. I auditioned for a part that was non-speaking, got the part, and once I put the grease paint on and heard the roar of the crowd, from that point on, I was hooked, and that was 1958, and today I'm still doing it.
Where did you receive your bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degrees from?
Oh, you want them all in that order? Okay. Well, I started at Nicholls State in Thibodaux, Louisiana, my hometown, after an unsuccessful year at LSU. Like a lot of students, I had a good time, and then I had to take a rest for a little while. Then I went to Nicholls State, then Francis T. Nicholls State College had just become a four-year degree-granting institution in '56, much like SAU. It was a very small school then, under 1,000 students. Once I got interested in theater, I really enjoyed college, and then I was in speech and drama for the first graduate in speech and drama from Nicholls State. I got my BA in 1960, I believe, 1961. And then my instructor was from Arkansas and had gotten her master's degree at the University of Arkansas and had gotten me an assistantship there. At that time, I didn't intend to go into graduate school. I was intending to go maybe into radio, television, or acting or something or other. But since I had the offer of the assistantship, I thought, well, why not? So I went with the idea that that was the end of my schooling. I was going to get my master's and then a terminal degree, so I didn't even write a thesis. I took 6 extra hours. You do that if it's going to be your terminal, and I figured that's all I was going to get. At that point, I wasn't interested in anything else. So I got my master's from there. And then the draft got me. The Uncle Sam at that time in the 60s was still drafting people, and my number came up. So I spent 3 years in the Army. And after that, I got an offer of a job, and then decided after starting to work in teaching that I enjoyed it, so I decided to go on for my PhD and went to the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and got my degree in theater at the University of Illinois, my PhD. In 1973, I think I completed that one. So it's been a long time.
So you ended up staying in school a lot more than you thought you were going
Yes,
to.
I did.
Did you ever aspire to go into acting professionally, or did you always want to teach drama communications?
Well, I thought about it, and I was at the wrong place at the wrong time most of the time. My instructor tried to get me a position at a summer theater in New York, in the New York of the East, right. The kind that usually lead to going on more professional. At that time, there was nothing open. Next year, they asked her if she had anyone to send. I was already gone, already in the Army. And I guess the Army probably killed any hope I had, because at that time, 3 years, you get rusty, you get out of it, and I was thinking more of radio and television at that time when I was in the Army.
Right. I was told in the pre-interview with you that you have been in 2 movies. What were they, and how did you get the parts?
Well, I got the part just by being an extra. Boxcar Bertha was directed by Marty Scorsese, who is probably one of the leading directors today. It was, I think, his first job. And it was exciting being with him. And it had a pretty good cast. Barbara Hershey was in it, and the guy who played Shane on television, David Carradine, was in it. Several good stars in it. So I got a small speaking part in a small, about a 3-minute segment on the screen. And then the second movie, I knew the guy who wrote the play, and he asked me if I wanted to be in it, and it was called Okanagan's Revenge. It was filmed in Texarkana. And the guy who was in the soap opera Capital, Rory Calhoun, was in that. Quite a gentleman, and I really enjoyed working with Rory Calhoun. And when I saw the promos for Capital, I said, "Hey, I know that guy. I worked with him."
I worked with him.
Quite a gentleman. So I got in that one, and on that picture, working on that picture as an assistant director, was the guy who is doing Evening Shade and all of that right now, Charles Thomason.
Charles Thomason,
That's
right.
where I first met Charles Thomason, was on that film. He was sort of an AED assistant director, helping him out, and that's where I first met Charlie Thompson, and he remembered me when I met him 15 years later.
Gosh, he's gone on to have some great TV shows.
Yeah, I wish he had taken me with him.
I know you said you'd served in the armed forces. What branch did you serve in, and how do you said it affected your life?
Well, I went in the U.S. Army. I had the chance to go in as an officer. The Air Force offered me a direct commission. The Marines offered me a direct commission, and I had a chance to go to Navy OCS school. But when I was working in radio, the Army recruiter was the only one who didn't try to recruit me. He said, you do me a lot more good behind a microphone than you would do in the Army. And we got to be pretty good buddies. So when I found out that I had to go in the service, I was going to be drafted. It was either be drafted, go into the infantry or whatever, take a chance, or join and get something that you really enjoy. I went and talked to him immediately, and I said, look, I'm due to go in on September 11th. That's when I'm going to be drafted, so what can we do? And I was thinking about going into information service, and he started talking to me about Army intelligence, where you have to be 22, they prefer people with college degrees, you have to take all this test and that test, and so on and so forth. I said, sounds pretty good. And we started the papers processing and got in Army intelligence and really enjoyed it. I spent 2 or 3 months at Fort Hollywood, Baltimore, Maryland in training, and then went to Japan straight from there and spent 27 months in Japan. Really enjoyed that, and I think it helped me grow up, and it helped me see a new side of life. I almost stayed in the Army. If it hadn't been for Vietnam, at that particular time, this was 1965, we're talking about Vietnam.
Right at the beginning.
Vietnam just got started, and I thought sure they would keep me in for a while. If it hadn't been for Vietnam, I probably would have put in for a direct commission, would probably have been commissioned a first lieutenant, or would have stayed in the Army, and by this time I probably would have been retired and doing no telling what. But that's the type of you take your chances. And while I was in the Army, just before I was going to get out, my undergraduate acting teacher, the same woman I was talking about earlier, sent me a letter saying that she was offered a job at Southern State College in Magnolia, Arkansas, and they had no position for her husband. She recommended me for the job. I had swore up and down to her I would never teach. I told her that's the last thing I would do. I'm not going to teach, so on and so forth. She said, you could eat while looking for something else. Why don't you take it? So I sent in an application and forgot about it.
Right.
And and you might have another question from there.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Well, when did you come to SAU?
1965, right after I got out of the Army. I was sitting at home in July. I had interviewed in San Francisco for jobs, in Lafayette, Louisiana, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and there were no TV jobs forthcoming. I wanted to go into television news. And I got a call while I was sitting at home in South Louisiana and said, are you still interested in a job at Southern State College? Well, I hadn't thought very much about it. They said, would you like to come up for an interview? I said, okay. So I took a map out and, said, where is Magnolia, Arkansas? And I looked at the map and found out it was just right across the state line from Louisiana. So I jumped in my Mustang, my 65 Mustang, jumped in my car and drove up here and interviewed for the job. And that's when I came here in 65.
Well, when you interviewed, what made you choose SAU? You said you had kind of an experience when you got here.
It's one of those things that, in life, you get feelings that come over you, and you never know what causes them. I was in an interview process with the president and the vice president for academic affairs, and then after that they turned me over to people within the speech department so that I could talk to them for a little while, and the guy said, let's go over to the Student Center and get a cup of coffee. So as I was walking across campus, this strange feeling came over me, like, this is where I belong, this feels good. I signed a contract before I left here that day.
That's great. We're glad you're here.
It's just one of those things that come over you. You can't answer them. I don't know why.
It's just a feeling.
But I signed. We have 1-year contracts here, and in my mind, I was here for 1 year.
Right. Just like you were just going to get 1 degree.
Yeah, I was here for 1 year from 1965 to 1992. It's been 1 year at a time.
Right, 1 year at a time. That's the way you have to take life. I was told earlier that you met your wife, Suzanne, when you were her instructor here at SAU. Tell us about that experience.
Well, she just was in a class, and you know how things go. I was young, I was very young at the time.
Very young.
Yeah, my hair was still
Very
dark.
single.
And my eyes were still shiny and that type of thing, and very young and very single, very unattached. And I just happened to meet her in an oral interpretation class or something or other. And we got to talking, and one thing led to another, and a couple of years later we got married.
Well, I understand you and your wife have 3 children, and your oldest son, Chris, is following in your footsteps. And I also heard that he was writing a play. Could you tell me a little bit about it?
Well, Chris is, I don't know if he's following in my footsteps or what he's doing. Chris went to the University of Arkansas for I was an English major, creative writing, and he was in the honors program. But he ran out of money and decided to come back to school. Chris had dabbled in plays all the while he was here. All of my kids did, and needed a part, stick them in it. People think, that's like forcing them. Well, they enjoyed it. They kept waiting for parts to be in.
They grew up with it.
They grew up with it. And when Chris came back here, he got a couple of plays here. He had been in plays at the University of Arkansas. It was a natural progression for him. And so we looked at a degree plan here and found out that if he finished his degree in English with a theater minor and taking as many courses in theater as he could get out of here rather quickly, and he will get out of here next December. He got interested in screenwriting and then in playwriting, which was a natural offshoot of it, and he's thinking now of going to grad school in playwriting, to get an MFA in playwriting, looking at the University of Texas at Austin and a couple of other places. But he and David Pickens, another theater major, are writing a play. They're adapting a novel, and I don't want to say too much about it because we don't have the rights to it yet. We were told that there shouldn't be any trouble getting the rights, but until we get the rights, we don't want to publicize too much because, you could be held for infringement of copyright or something like that. But it looks like the rights are forthcoming. If they are, it's a possible fall production.
Well, what is the play about?
It's strange. I really don't know how to explain what it's about. It's about this person who got a master's degree from Tulane, lives in New Orleans, this little area of New Orleans right off the French Quarter, 32 years old, hadn't held a job, can't hold a job. His view of the world is skewed, and he's a weird person, and he affects everyone around him. He seems to attract all of the weirdos. And he
like
runs,
a magnet?
Yeah, he runs into contact with all of them, and his mother's up in arms. At first she's subservient to him, then she tries to decide what can I do with him, and at the end of the play she takes some action that I don't think can be divulged because it's sort of an ending that you don't expect, but it does happen. It's just about this guy and his adventures and the people he runs into looking for jobs and the type of jobs he gets and the weirdos he runs into and what happens to his life. He has a worldview, and his worldview is weird. So all I can say is it's about this guy Ignatius, and Ignatius is weird. It's interesting working on it, trying to make it hang together as a play. Coming from a novel to a play can be terribly difficult.
And do you have any other help? I mean, is there anyone else helping them work with it? Or?
Well, we're doing it in a class. We have a directed study, and we have 6, 7 people working on the play. They're writing, and the people are reading and making comments and saying, this works, this doesn't work, so on and so forth. And what we're doing is workshopping the play. And by workshopping the play, we hope to come up by the end of this semester with a script that is in rough form but complete. And all it will take will be some more work on their part during the next half of the summer. And hopefully in the fall we put it together with some of our regular actors, scholarship actors, and as they start fleshing out the parts, then they will be making comments to the playwright saying, well, we think this doesn't hang, or this scene doesn't work, or these lines don't fit in my mouth, can we do this? And the change process takes place. We produce the play. We ask for audience comments, what they think about the play, any comments they want to make concerning the play. We take those comments, we look at them, and we make changes in the parts of the play that didn't work.
So it may take 2 to 3 times for the play
Yes, it
to
would take a
actually
couple of times, and we hope that if it hangs together well enough and good enough that we will enter it in the American College Theater Festival as a new play entry from Southern Arkansas University, and then it would get a comment from a playwright there who would sit with Chris and David and would then comment on the play and give them suggestions as to how they can fix it, what they can do with it, so on and so forth. And then if we're lucky enough, maybe it'll go on to more competition. And each step, it gets critiqued.
Right.
And that's what we're looking
Which
for.
also means it gets better.
We're looking for critiques, and that's what you need. Once you need people to tell you, this works, this doesn't work, take this out, put this in, expand this, take that away. We're not playwrights here.
Right. It'll also be good for Chris and David's name to get
It would be very good for them, especially some of the playwrights at some of the universities where they're wanting
Right.
to go see the play. And then, yes, it would help them get into grad school a lot better, and the guy from UT is always at the American College Theater Festival. So.
And that's where Chris is kind of
So
wanting
that
to go.
Chris has met him and favorably impressed with him and has taken a trip up there, and he likes the situation. So hopefully maybe that's where he'll end up. I have nothing against UT.
No. It's a good school. I know that you said from Thibodaux, Louisiana, way down in the southern part of the state. How is their culture different from South Arkansas's culture?
Oh, like day and night. It's an entirely different world. You cross the Red River at Alexandria, Louisiana, and you enter into a new world. The coffee is the first thing you notice is if you stop someplace and get a cup of coffee. Suddenly it's thicker, it's stronger, it has a different taste to it. The people speak with a little more pronounced accent. You see more Catholic churches than you see anything else. You start noticing a difference in the food. It's a lot spicier and a lot more relaxed atmosphere as far as entertainment. People seem to get together in bigger parties and wilder and that type. I think it goes back to the old fête de deux, as they called it in the Cajun culture, the weddings and all, where everything was a celebration. If you had a wedding, I mean, it started in the morning, they got married, and it went on and on, and bride and groom could leave. But the party continued
kept on.
until everybody decided it was time to go home, and that could be midnight.
Right.
And it's still that way. Parties still hang on like that. In fact, here in Magnolia, just recently, one of Chris's friends got married to a girl from Grand Isle, Louisiana, originally, and they had the wedding at the home around the pond, medieval dress, and then after that, the wedding reception was at the Catholic Student Center, Catholic Rec Center here, and it was a good South Louisiana type with food and gumbo and boudin and all of that good stuff, and
Bet you
dancing
love that.
and a little refreshment, liquid refreshment. You know, it was a good, almost fête de deux in Magnolia.
What do you see in the future for the SAU Theater and Communications Department?
Growth, probably more success as we pull in better students and our students get out and get jobs and make names for themselves, then that will help us more and more and more. Same thing in the theater as we get more people into grad school, and we have more going to graduate school, both in mass comm and in theater. And that's where your influence comes, because if people go into graduate school, then they go into teaching, and your influence goes along, and the name goes along. If they make a name for themselves, where did you go to school, so on and so forth, and that helps a lot. The people who get out in the industry and work, that helps us too, because it's a lot easier to get people into the market when you have people in the market already. So we keep looking and hoping that we get more and more people in the market that way. But I think success and growth, we're growing. Our actors are getting better. Our theater program is getting better. With our scholarship program, we will just continue to grow. That's what I see.
I think the productions are just getting so good.
They're much better, yes. We hang in there with any of the schools in the state, that's for sure. And what I saw last festival, we were better than probably 6 of the 8 shows I saw at festival. We probably were better than any of them. It's just we didn't, it's one of these things where you got a bunch of people selecting. If your name doesn't get off the table, you just don't make it. But we were better than they were. And this is maybe I may be partial, but I sat in on a selection committee and I saw the shows. I listened to people talk about them, and I saw the final shows. And I know that we were.
And that's good, because I know SAU has got really kind of a small. Would you consider it a small theater communications
Sure,
department?
we're small. We have maybe 15 majors, a few people working with them, 12, 13 scholarships. We're small, but we're active.
Right.
We do 4, 5, 6 productions a year, some one-act plays. Our students get a lot of work, and that's the way you improve. It's like almost anything else. You can learn theory in a classroom, but you don't learn how to do it till you get out and do it. And you make your mistakes, and that's one thing here. We let people make mistakes. And we hope that they don't make them too long, but you have a chance to work in productions, and the pressure is not there that we've got to make all the money in the world from this, that we live on our budget. It's a learning experience, and that helps a lot.
Right. Do you feel a student that graduates in theater or broadcasting or any communications degree here at SAU is going to be able to successfully compete in the job market with other schools that, say, have larger budgets to work with, larger student bodies?
I would say given an equal chance they would. Many times, the name of a school carries a lot of weight sometimes, but if our students are given a chance to show what they can do in an interview situation, in an audition situation, or something like that, I think they have the talent to go ahead and do it. In our mass comm program, we may not have the television studios that other people have, but I think we have a good program that teaches people how to gather news, how to put news together, how to put a package together, how to edit. And after all, if you're looking to get into television news, that's the stuff you need to know. If you can handle that, you can handle it with anybody. One thing here, I think maybe we get more hands-on experience than some. I've heard some students who've gone to a bigger school with a lot of equipment and said, we can't even touch it.
Right, because there's so many in the class.
Yeah,
I feel we get a lot of individualized attention also.
And we've got a good staff here. We've got good people in every field, so I think we're okay.
I agree. Dr. Cortez, we'd like to say thank you for talking with us today and letting us know a little bit more about you and your life and your work. Thanks also to our listeners, and we appreciate you tuning in and hope you'll join us next time for the KSAU Interview program. For Jennifer and myself, have a great day.
SAU Magazine is a production of broadcast journalism students in the Department of Theater and Mass Communication at Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia.